So many awesome parts. You simply won't believe how much this deck will help your work.
Put down your coffee now. We give you ways to make your project sing.
A helpful guide.
With lots of
It's
slides.
super fun.
You in?
Nope. With music and some visuals, we'll show you how it's done.
You in?
That's great. Let's get started then. You simply
You
won't
won't believe how much this deck will change your life. This deck will change your life.
This deck will change your life. Managing projects. Hello.
Let's be honest, what song do you pick to start something like this?
It's a very good place to start. When you read, you begin with
ABC.
When you work, you begin with contracting. The first real step just happens to be contracting.
Contracting.
Don't we just love contracting?
So this is Allison. She's going to be the heroine of this story. Think of her as Julie Andrews in every story that you loved growing up. Except for, because this is a project management musical, she's not going to really have a guitar and feeding the birds tuppence a pound. She's more likely to have a scrum board and be talking about JIRA story points, right? So what's the first phase of this project that she's going to be doing? What's the first thing that she needs to be doing? We kind of just did it in the last song.
Contracting.
That's right! Contracting. This is the very beginning of any project. It's very important at the very beginning when you take over as a project manager that you understand what's going on in your contract. Because let's be honest, if you miss something here, you're going to either look like a complete fool in a couple of days, or you're going to have one of those really high, costly overruns that you're apologizing for many, many months to come, and you're still there. So we really need to be honest, or we need to be very direct when we're going through our contract to make sure that Allison understands what's going on. So let's list out the types of things you're going to be looking for when you go through your statement of work the first time.
Scope, you must spell out the scope. Cost, define the payment terms.
Dates.
You're unavailable.
Clear.
Deliverables list.
Clarity.
On exclusions.
Signatures.
Yours from higher ups.
Tea.
A drink with jam and bread. That will bring us back to no, the scope. There's a schedule for feds and designers. I got dashboards set up for my client. My spreadsheets are fly and they're on Google Drive. And I'm told the deposit check finally arrived. Oh, what an organized project. Oh, what a beautiful day. I've got a wonderful feeling. This project will be okay.
Also, as a project manager, you need to make sure you have chaps just ready at any time. So now that we've got our contract in place, our team's organized, it's time to get ready for our kickoff meeting. We at Palantir like to start off every project with a day, 2-day, maybe 3-day kickoff with our clients. This is the first time that our project team internally, as well as their project team over there, or different various members of different teams, are going to meet face-to-face. So what we want to do is make sure that as we formally kick off this project, that we have everything together, that we understand what we're going to be doing on the project, and that we're able to make the right people meet with the right people at the right time, which is all going to fall to our intrepid PM throughout this project. While we're going through and we're preparing for the kickoff, we need to keep in mind that the number one goal is that we're really trying to build trust and really trying to build understanding with our client. We want to make sure that we understand their problems, we understand what they're ultimately trying to do, and that everybody in our team is on the same page. We're going to go through during this kickoff and we're going to define certain goals. What is the point of this project? What is the point of this website? How can we make sure that it's the most awesome that it can be? We want to make sure we gain consensus on what's important, what's not important, and kind of the terms and language we're going to be using across the board. Really, our team wants to make sure that we're doing a lot of learning and a lot of listening along the way. Clients probably going to do a lot more talking than we are, but that's kind of the point. We want to make sure that we speak like them, we understand what's going on. We want to empower the right team members to do the right things. We want to also kind of manage expectations. Sometimes there's a lot of blue sky ideas, and we have a not blue sky contract, so we need to make sure we're managing those expectations. We identify risks that we're going to put in that risk log later, and then we want to make sure that we're creating a good understanding for how we're going to collaborate. Our PM's job during all of this is making sure that there's a really great agenda and really great understanding of what's going to happen. You need to determine the meetings that you're going to have, make sure you get all the right people in the right room at the right time. You need to solidify those travel plans to make sure those right people can fly there. And then plan what types of exercises and what types of ways you're going to get at that information you need. And if it's the right client, the right atmosphere, maybe plan a couple of dinners, maybe a couple other things afterwards with them. You can see that eventually these things can start to build into a pretty long agenda. We've got an example of one that we use in the decks and the information that we'll be passing along afterwards. We need to keep in mind through all of these exercises and everything that's going to be happening, the real goal during our kickoff is getting to know our client.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you. Empathy mapping, drawing a line on whiteboards. Hello, thanks for coming. Sticky note sessions, writing your thoughts down with markers. Learning with partners, their users' needs.
Get started on figuring out what those user needs are that Allison was talking about. One exercise that we typically do when we start meeting with the client is empathy mapping. If anybody's done this before, what you try to do is put yourself in the minds of different types of people who will be using that site. Different people do different diagrams, but you try to pretend you're that particular user. Back on Allison's healthcare client, we might put ourselves in the thought pattern of what a patient might be thinking, maybe what a doctor is. And then try to think about what that person might be seeing, feeling, doing, hearing. Again, there might be different ways to do these depending on what type of client you're working with, what have you. But we find that empathy mapping is a really great way to start that process of learning what our client what our potential visitors might be doing as we move forward. Allison might also be organizing an information architecture workshop. She's a PM, so it's another excuse to use sticky notes, which, that's always a thing. So she wants to make sure she's figuring out exactly how we want to organize the terms, how we might start to build a navigation structure. Unfortunately, though, as we start moving through this, we also have to do a wrap-up session. I skipped that slide there for a second. When we're doing our wrap-up, there's a couple of different things we might be doing. We might want to talk about what the value is, where we want to spend most of our time, quality, scope, budget, or time, what's the most important to our users, to our client team, and have the team vote. We might talk about what was in, what was out. There's a lot of things that we talked about, but it's a clear way to figure out what's going to be in, what's not going to be in. And then my favorite is always to ask the question at the end, what's the number one thing that we need to get right? What's the number one thing that at the end of this project we do that the client's going to be super, super happy about? And you get some really interesting answers that really definitely help you guide the project as it continues through. So once we've finished this up, we have a good idea of what's going on, everybody's met the right people. Unfortunately, we're going to have somebody who's going to get sick. Somehow that amazing schedule that Allison built is going to have to be ripped apart, and it's going to have to be started over. And that's unfortunate. But Allison's going to have to figure out how to rewrite that and accommodate that change.
You're going to Argentina. We'll have to get on without you. Forgot my line? Process with my persistence. We'll make our deadlines despite your distance.
We've now kicked off the project. We understand what's going on in our contract. And now we're going to move into what we call the strategy and discovery phase. What we want to be doing during this is, again, understanding more of what our client needs, how we can build the best project, and how we can explain it to everybody else. Our PM's job at this stage, as it will be in most every stage going forward, is making sure that everybody keeps moving and that she is able to remove any blockers that are coming up and she understands what those blockers are. Our team members have various different tasks they're going to be doing during this phase. You might have some folks who are going through and doing a content strategy audit. They're going to be figuring out taxonomy. They might be mapping out exactly what users' needs are on this. They might be figuring out content types. You might have a data analyst going through, reading through their Google Analytics, figuring out what we want to do, or what the users are doing and how we might be able to improve that. There might be various testing, surveys. Foundational development work may be beginning during this phase. One thing that we typically like to do during our projects is start a build spec, which we have an example through the links we'll be giving at the end, of how you could lay out the different fields that you'll need for those different content types. Figure that out early, it makes your project a lot easier as we move on. During all of these different discussions with various team members, content auditing and figuring out build specs, Allison needs to help make sure that the team is able to gather the data that they need at the time they need it. She needs to be helping analyze feedback from the client, helping the team understand what that is. She might be planning user testing, because it's great to have an idea to do it, but it's another whole thing to make sure you plan and execute on it. She needs to make sure everybody's on block, and then she needs to make sure that everybody is moving forward. For each client, we like to make sure that we identify what their key performance indicators are. We call these KPIs. For that healthcare client that we're working with, Allison might be identifying, along with the team, that we want to make sure that users are easily able to find a physician and how that might gear toward being an indicator of success. Viewing those profiles of physicians might be some form of success. Ultimately, having a higher organic search could be as well. Depending on your client, depending on their needs, these things can vary. Allison knows a lot about the healthcare space, so she's in a good spot to help the team measure the project.
525,600 minutes, 525,000 users each night, 525,600 minutes. How do you measure your website? In bounces, in sessions, in page views, in traffic entry, in exits, in brand or type of device. 525,600 minutes. How do you measure your KPIs? Portions of time. Portions of time. Measure your time.
So now that we know what we're building and why we're building it, we need to make sure that we figure out how it's going to look and how we can help the audience do all the really great things that we're hoping they're able to do on that website. We do that beginning with our design phase. Our team will work to make sure that we create a visual interface that works in tandem with all that functionality and all the defined attributes that we talked about through the discovery phase. Our design team works in typically 3 phases. We start with style tiles, which are kind of, have you ever watched HGTV and you see all those mood boards? That's kind of what one of those looks like. We like to move into a design concept phase after that, which is where we might be doing a series of wireframes. We might be doing static comps, but really starting to show how the architecture and everything will be coming together, seeing how those colors might interact with those fonts. And then last, we move into a design prototype, which is my personal favorite phase. This is when our users are going to, our client teams are going to be able to actually see their work within a browser, and be able to stretch it out, highlight, see exactly what it looks like in the browser as opposed to a pixel-perfect Photoshop font. Allison, while all of the design team are doing their phases and doing their iterations, needs to make sure that she's scheduling regular presentations with the client. She needs to make sure that they're on board with the decisions that are being made and understand what's going on, and can give appropriate feedback along the way. She's going to make sure that she's helping collect the feedback. She's helping making sure that the team understands what's going on. And she's also going to be making sure that nobody's blocked, no one's stopped from doing what they need to do. Her real goal is to make sure that everything is able to keep moving. So the team has done a fantastic job. They're moving into their phase 3, they're ready to go. Allison has scheduled a meeting with the client and stakeholders to present the work. Everybody gets really excited, but unfortunately, we have to run into one of those awful villains of our story, which in this case is stakeholder disapproval. Just when we thought everything was going well, we got through that whole vacation problem snafu, and we get one more thing. But as Allison starts to hear what's going on, she starts to dig in a little bit more. Our crafty and quite diplomatic project manager is going to have to navigate some tricky waters. How does she placate all these voices in the room?
Our client seems to have some fears that our direction isn't clear. Perhaps their needs aren't being fully met. This is the time to keep in mind their ass is on the line. They need to know we've got their back, and so pointing to all the research helps the stakeholder calm down. The conversation helps the stakeholder calm down. It's the most efficient way.
That was a lot. So we've gotten through a contract, we've gone through a strategy and design phase, we've gone through a design phase, and our client team is finally happy. And you remember that break we were going to talk about at the beginning? Let's maybe call it an intermission. It's time for the client to go on that. So it's what? 2, 3? You built the schedule. How long is it?
It's about a week.
About a week? All right.
Which means for you and I about 20 seconds.
About 20 seconds. How do you think this is going?
It's okay.
You're something bad.
Did you sleep well last night?
I did. That was great.
Yeah.
It had a creepy rope though.
Yeah. Creepy ropes sound good. Hey, guess what? We're back.
Last time on Project Management the Musical, we went through we started with a contract. We got a new client, healthcare industry. Allison's got a lot of great experience working with healthcare, so she understands the needs and what's going to be happening. She's making sure that we're unblocking everybody as we're moving through. We got through a fantastic strategy and discovery phase where we learned a lot about what the client was really needing as part of the project. We then moved into a design phase where we did have a little bit of a hiccup there with one of our first villains, but Allison was able to figure out how to use just a little spoonful of sugar to get through that. And now we're finally able to get to the development phase. This is where our lead engineer and that team is really going to be able to structure stuff. And the client's really going to start seeing a lot of things come to life, being able to use the product. At Palantir, we like to use generally an agile process. What this means is that we work in 2-week increments called sprints. At the beginning of a sprint, we'll say, hey, here's the numbers of things that we think are achievable in the next 2 weeks. We put points on those, so we're able to determine magnitude. And then we're able to prioritize those along with the client team. Again, in 2-week sprints, so the client is able to say, well, I might not get it this time, but maybe I'll get it in the next sprint. And we're really able to set some of those expectations with that. At the beginning of every sprint, the team plans out that week. At the end, we have a little retrospective where the team talks about what went well, what could be improved, and what they could do better next time around. When the team first starts really working in this phase, the developers and the team will be assigning points onto different tasks. This is a magnitude. Generally, we don't like to use hours. We like to use magnitude. This helps us assess what's like and what's not like. They'll help the client assess options, so they can see like, hey, maybe we don't do this week, we do it next week, or this is a higher value, let's move it up to the top of the list. They're helping set dependencies, so hey, if we want to do this, we need to make sure we do that first. But really, this is a development phase, so the big thing is building the thing. Making sure that throughout that, we're QAing it, we're understanding what's going on, and then ultimately are able to regularly deploy. Allison's job during all of this is making sure that the schedule and understanding of what happens at each part of that sprint is understandable. This is a typical sprint schedule. We'll be able to provide an example of this so you guys can see it. But it always begins with having daily scrums each day. We have sprint planning, backlog grooming is kind of another phrase that we use. And then we also end those with a demo. So we're able to show clients, hey, this is what's been worked on the last 2 weeks. Does this meet your needs? Is there something else we need to know? The client will be helping us make sure that we are understanding everything and acceptance criteria, so if we want to make sure we're building the right thing at the right time, they're able to help with that. They're prioritizing value. They're also maybe doing internal demos with their teams to help get more feedback. And they're participating in daily meetings. But as this goes on, most projects are going to have multiple sprints. You're going to get really tight with the client. You're going to get really tight with your team. And unfortunately, sometimes you're going to get our next dreaded victim, or excuse me, our next dreaded villain, which is scope creep. This is when somebody might be trying to pack too much stuff into the budget. Allison is our PM. She read that whole contract at the beginning. She has a clear understanding of that. She's also going to be working with our team lead to make sure that everybody has a very good idea of what was talked about at the very beginning and understands how we can make sure that that's what's going to happen in this. But again, there's going to be scope creep. There's going to be a lot of different things that people are asking for, Allison's really going to have to be on her toes and really have to figure out the best way to sometimes ask somebody to kind of let it go.
Out of scope, can't let this creep anymore. Out of scope, lack of funds you can't ignore. I don't care what they're going to say. Let my boss rage on. That code always bothered me anyway.
So our deadline is fast approaching. We're near the end of our planned sprints. We're near the end of everything that's going on with this. The team is tired. We've got deadlines approaching. Perhaps there's pressure from our client really kind of telling us to get this done faster with a little bit more in there. Allison's really got to be working with the team to make sure that she's able to keep the things turning right apparently. She needs to make sure that she's managing expectations, that everybody is working toward the next steps. Also maybe starting to get the team ready to move into support agreements, moving into account management agreements afterwards. Working with our marketing team to make sure that there's potential case study or other things coming from that. But as this starts getting near the very end, there's going to be a problem. One of the key engineers, heartbreak, is just going to get sick. And now our heroine has to manage fewer points in the sprint with the same expectations. What is she going to do? There we go.
Oh, Larry, caught influenza, oh, Larry. And suddenly the sprint will never be the same to me. Oh, Larry. I forgot my line real quick. You've got to get well, please, oh, Larry, because the features need your Drupal 8 expertise. Oh, Larry. Say it loud with our hearts resounding. Say it soft because his head is pounding. Oh, Larry, I brought you some Kleenex.
Thankfully, Larry rebounds quickly, and our team and our sprints are able to continue moving forward, and Allison's plans are...
Work is done. It's enough for this grateful manager. Get those phones out now. This far. And can you feel the love tonight? Finally rest. It's enough to make clients and engineers be grateful for each test.
We got one more thing though. Product's launched, everybody's happy, but Allison has one more giant, big old task that she needs to take care of, and that's our retrospective. We need to make sure that everybody's had an opportunity to talk about what went well, what we could improve on, and then what lessons we can learn as we move into the next project. Allison needs to make sure that everybody has an understanding of what's going on, and that she's really able to jog everyone's memories of what the last few days have been.
Memories all alone in my office. I can smile at the old days when we worked as a team. I remember the time our Google Hangouts cracked out. Memories, such a dream.
You've done your job right. Hopefully they'll come back to you. It's a lot easier to work with a client that you've worked with before than it is to start a whole new sales process up. The more that you're able to continue working with people, either through making sure you have a support agreement, we're able to help with various updates that the site needs, whether they're big features or is just doing any upgrades that Drupal needs along the way to modules or core itself. It's a lot easier to do than having to start the whole relationship from scratch. But you have to make sure you're keeping in touch with your client. They might not need some help right away. Maybe they just need it a couple of weeks down the line. But the goal is that you make sure that you never say goodbye. So we started with the song, Hello, and we're going to end with,
Hello? It's me. I was wondering if after all this time you'd like to meet your colleague, to hire us again. Your colleagues have a Drupal 6 site, and now it's unsupported. Hello from the other side. I must have called 1,000 times to tell you I'll build you another website. So just give your budget, and I'll make it right once more. Hey, MidCamp. That's it. Thanks for coming.
thank you for coming to Project Management